I often get asked about nerve pressure or subluxation, and what exactly is that? Well, first of all, I want to give credit where it's due. Dr. Patrick Gentempo is the one who came up with this metaphor, so a shout out to him. First of all, whenever we're dealing with nerve pressure, that is basically your body's defense mechanism for dealing with stress. It's very similar to the circuit breaker system of your house and the electrical system. So what happens is whenever in your kitchen too many appliances are all on at the same time, that electricity overloads the system, it is too much stress, and it flips your circuit breaker. Now the reason it does that is a good thing. It shuts down that kitchen so it doesn't burn down the rest of your house. It saves the house at the expense of the kitchen. Now your body's the same way. When a certain area of the body is under such extreme stress, your body forms a subluxation, it shuts down, it creates nerve pressure to de-stress, to basically shut down that particular area so to save the rest of the body. It's a defense mechanism. Now, to understand how all this works, we actually need to go into the general adaptation potential here. So basically, your body has a potential for dealing with stress, and it's basically in the gap between these two lines. The bottom of the gap is your bottoming out, which is essentially death. And then the top is at the maximum level you can get to before you trip one of these wires, before you create subluxation. Now, throughout your entire day, you have stressors. It goes up and down all around. And for the most part, we should be able to live within the gap and not create any tripping of the wires, not create any subluxations. But here's where the problem lies. When we start to get into higher levels of stress, now this can be caused by a major trauma. You could have a car accident. You could have a major fall. You could get injured in some way. And then that is creating excess stress that is causing you to go above the potential. You could get exposed to some really toxic environments. You could be going through a lot of stress at work, a sick loved one, and that is causing you to rise above these levels. Now, as long as you only spike up but you come right back down, for the most part, we don't see too many problems. The real problem is when all of this stress builds up and now you're starting to live above these lines. And this is where your general adaptation begins to fall. And what your body does is it says, okay, that's it. We're shutting down. And what it does is it lowers your general adaptive potential. So now, here that you have a lower adaptive potential, are you going to be making better health choices or worse health choices? Probably worse. You're not getting the sleep that you need. You may even go on a prescription medication, and now you have that toxicity to deal with. So then we start to see this spiraling down, and now we've lowered your gap even further. So now what's happened is things that you used to be able to handle before are now causing you to trigger, are causing you to go into subluxation, are causing nerve pressure, which that then causes a downward spiral, less sleep, less adaptation, maybe even bad food choices now, more drugs, and then we get to here, and then that's spiraling down to here. So this is where we find people who said, gosh, I used to be able to play basketball with my kids, but now that seems to completely throw me off. I can't even function after that. We run into people who say, wow, I used to be able to just play a round of golf, and now I can't do that anymore without having problems. When we start to get to here, they're like, I can't sleep without waking up sore. See, this is what's happening. We're in this spiraling general adaptation potential to where you just have no margin for error anymore. And it will continue to spiral and spiral until your adaptation potential is basically none and you get to the point of death. Now, on the positive side, what also can happen is you come in and you start making better health choices. You get adjusted. So where you were before, now you can reverse it and re-spiral up, and you have greater potential. You can do things again. And then we get adjusted and we're eating right and we're making better choices and we're spiraling up. And then we're spiraling up. We keep getting adjusted. We keep raising the gap. Now, the wonderful thing about our body versus the electrical system in your house, our bodies can learn. our bodies continue to metabolize and to understand and create new levels of gaps. So what happens is people who, this was their former best level, but as they're making better choices, better foods, getting adjusted, neurologically in alignment, they get up to these levels and they create new, higher gaps in their life. So one of the things that I also like to explain is, why do you need to come in and get adjusted multiple times? Well, let me explain that to you right here. So when we are dealing where you are in a situation like this, where your gap is all the way down here, so we adjust you and now you're able to get up to here. But then, see how we're still spiking, we're still creating subluxation. Normal everyday activities are still causing you to trip your wires. See, and then it's going to spiral right back down. So what we do is we get you adjusted, raise that adaptation level, and before you have a chance to flip the switch again, before you have a chance to hit the circuit breaker, we get you adjusted again and raise it again. Get you adjusted again, raise it again, get you adjusted, raise it again, until the point where we can get where your normal everyday life isn't tripping your wires, isn't flipping the switch, isn't causing subluxation. Then we get into the great part. We get into where we keep raising your gap into these higher and higher levels. And this, my friends, this is where you see the 80-year-olds who are still running marathons. This is where you are seeing the octogenarians who are out on the mission fields and serving and still doing fantastic and outrunning the youngins. See, their gap, their general adaptation potential is so high that they can do that. It's not aging, it's your gap. One thing you need to understand about your gap, your general adaptation potential, is the quality of your spine does contribute to how far of a gap you have. So, for instance, if you have a completely healthy spine, wide open foramen, your nerves can exit free and clear, no impingement, you have a much higher gap than somebody who has massive levels of degeneration, very, very narrow nerve roots, and constant impingement. See, this right here, this situation, this dramatically lowers your gap, and it lowers your gap permanently. So one of the factors that we are looking to do is, one, stop this process from continuing to degenerate and continuing to lower and lower and lower your gap. Furthermore, if there is any potential to reverse this and open up that gap, that's what we want to do. And that's what we're doing on the very musculoskeletal level when we're looking at the x-rays, when we're doing the analysis of your spine, when we are looking at all of those re-evaluations, we're seeing how much have we raised the gap for you. So one of the most important questions that we get is, what does it mean to be healthy at a cellular level? Or furthermore, what is exactly happening at the cellular level? I'm going to do my best to explain this as simply as possible. This is an incredibly complicated process, so just bear with me. First of all, when we're talking about the cell, you have a cell right here. Your body is made up of millions upon billions of cells. And inside of each and every cell is DNA. Now, your DNA is like a blueprint. It is fixed. It is very similar to a blueprint of a house. So the best analogy that I can give you here is, have you ever been to one of those subdivisions where they had a model home? That model home has a blueprint. Now, within every model home, within every blueprint, there's a lot of different ways you can express that blueprint. So there's a lot of different ways you can do the flooring, the walls, the cabinetry. You can make other different design choices that do dictate and change how it feels and how it functions. And that is how your DNA works. Your DNA is made up of genes, and these genes do have the ability to either express or not express themselves. So while your DNA is fixed, the expression of it is not. And in fact, for every one gene you have, there are over 3,000 different ways that gene can express itself. So, how does these genes and this DNA, how do we turn on and off these genes? Well, that comes from the environment of the cells. So, the cellular environment, the substance that surrounds the cells, dictates how the cell will function and what is able to get in, what is able to get out, and what is the expression overall going to be. So for instance, if you take a cell and you put it in an environment of red blood cells, it will act and function as a red blood cell. Now if you take the same cell and you put it into bone, a bone environment, it will act and function as a bone. The environment dictates the function. Now furthermore, whenever we have the various environments, the surrounding, what is in the environment can also change how your cells act. So for instance, if in the environment you have various toxins, and these toxins are able to permeate in, they can impact the genes, turn on and off various genes, and therefore have various expressions that you do not want. Now, furthermore, if you have your various nutrients and they are getting in, then we also see that level of expression, and those nutrients are to the positive, and you'll see positive expressions of those genes. One of the other things that impacts the environment of the cell is neurotransmitters. These various neurotransmitters come in so many different forms. A lot of you understand them as hormones. A lot of neurotransmitters come in the form of hormones. These hormones permeate the membrane. They go in and they impact what is going on in the DNA and can change the expression of that particular cell. Now, where those neurotransmitters come from? They come from the nervous system. The nervous system sends the signals down through neurotransmitters to impact the cell and to change how you are functioning and feeling. Now, when we're looking at this whole system, there are basically two major factors that impact the expression of your cells. The toxins versus nutrients, the foods you eat, the environment that you're in, and your nervous system. Now, when we're talking about the nervous system, there's really three things that can negatively impact the nervous system. We call them the 3 T's: trauma, toxin, and thought. So, depending to, and these, let's take these to the negative, depending on levels of trauma. For instance, if there's trauma happening, this nervous system interprets that trauma, says send neurotransmitters to create inflammation, create pain, to shut down the system. Or if there, let's say there's stressful thoughts, you're perceiving stress, you're perceiving a stressful environment, they will send those signals via the nervous system, the neurotransmitter, saying shut everything down. We're in a high stress situation. Don't do anything else. Don't reproduce the cells. Don't do anything, because we got to conserve energy to fight the tiger that's chasing us. So when we have these various negative influences on our nervous system, those therefore impact the health of the cells. Now, it can go to the positive as well, though. For instance, instead of having thoughts of stress, when you have thoughts of love and when you have thoughts of abundance, and those thoughts triggering the nervous system, triggering neurotransmitters, did you know that when people report that they are in love, they are over 200% less likely to get sick? Thoughts can impact the nervous system, impact which neurotransmitters. We know this already too: serotonin, dopamine, all the good hormones going in whenever we're having those positive thoughts. Same with the opposite of toxins. When you're in good, clean environments with good, pure air, like we've even have people who go to oxygen bars, or are able to take in very healthy, clean air, how that impacts the nervous system, it impacts the neurotransmitters Same with trauma, lack of trauma, exercise, and being in one of those great positions. Now, let me ask you something. If you have, let's take this analogy to, you have a nation that is constantly under war. It is constantly in battle. It, instead of using its resources to build up the economy of the nation, instead what is happening, it's using all of its resources just to fight against itself. Is that nation going to prosper? No. But if we have a nation who is able to utilize all of their resources towards building up, towards growth, towards development, what happens to the economy of that nation? Well, it's the same way in our body. When our body is fighting against itself constantly, destroying our entire cellular system, okay, that is a system that is lowering its adaptive potential. Whereas opposed to when we have exercise, good hydration, great environments, and in thinking in positive ways, then we can impact, build up cells. And let me tell you how fast this can go. Many of the body cells regenerate and reproduce themselves in less than 90 days. Some of your cells, like especially the intestinal tract, it's less than 3 days. Less than 3 days, these cells have completely regenerated and made new cells. That, folks, is how fast we can see change when we're using the proper channels and we are getting you healthy at the cellular level.